Fuck it.
And
live. Oh. I didn't know you had gotten to that part again.
We've fucked up the intro yet again. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Hi, welcome to Botha Rants. My name is Sophia Botha, and I'm joined by Ozma.
Hello. I was just trying to make that Bill O'Reilly quote, that sort of meme, right before the show went live, but
yeah.
Oops.
Sorry for the delay, folks. We've had a few technical problems. Zoom is not working properly for some reason.
It's not connecting any of the audio. We can't hear each other on Zoom. We can hear each other on every other platform, and all the testing works. So it's probably a server problem on Zoom's end. It'll probably be fine by tomorrow, but like today,
it'll probably be fine in 5 minutes. You know. Anyways, yes, as I say, my name is Sophia Botha. Welcome to Botha Rants, the YouTube stream where we go through all the latest LGBTQ/diversity news of interest, or at least interest to me. Okay, so on with the show. Right, I need to give you an update about Aria. Now, this the GoFundMe, the link to it is in the description. This is for Aria de Meslow's defense fund. For those who are unawares, who haven't been watching this show, who might have missed the episodes where we've spoken about Aria de Meslow. Aria had a house raided by FBI SWAT back in March for essentially selling Bitcoin. Okay, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Aria showed me the other day that on the court documents they scrubbed out a reference in a female pronoun, she, and wrote they in reference to her. No, she's a she.
Yeah.
put it like this: I can't imagine how if you've ever spoken to Aria, if you've ever seen it, you just can't imagine, her living as a guy.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
I have seen.
Like, they is like relates to gender neutral pronouns, but like, if she's
but it said
binary trans, so like, she shouldn't be misgendered like that.
But it gets worse.
Oh no!
I know that. I spoke to Aria last year, and she said she was planning on having various surgeries which she needs to have to deal with being gender dysphoric, which is the technical name for being trans. But it's the medical term for
well, I mean, it's
trans.
One aspect.
Yeah,
you don't require gender dysphoria to be trans, obviously, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, all right, true. I'm no true scammer, so that's absolutely true.
Yeah, no, I know. I just wanted to make sure that people didn't think that you were going down that road, because I know you're not. So
yeah. Now Aria does have, but Aria is diagnosed with gender dysphoria, right?
Yeah,
and
same.
She doesn't. Yeah, as I am and as you are. Now Aria doesn't talk publicly about how dysphoria affects her, but I do know it does affect her. Okay. And if she doesn't want to discuss it, that's up to her. I've always said that I'm always prepared to be a shoulder to cry on if she ever needs one, because I do get the impression that when it comes to being able to reach out to other trans people, she's particularly other trans women, she's kind of isolated. And as the old saying goes, the only other person who's going to understand a trans woman is another trans woman. That's a generalization. That's not always true, but if Aria says certain things to me, I'm going to understand because I've had similar experiences. Anyways, as I said, she was planning on having various surgeries to deal with gender dysphoria. She's now told me that she's been prevented from having those surgeries because of the feds and the prosecution they've launched against her. She's facing indictments along the lines of basically running a money transfer business without a license, and I think another charge might be fraud or something or other. It's bullshit. I can tell you something. She would not commit fraud. She's a pretty stand-up person. Oh, sorry. Anyways. The thing is, she's been prevented from getting necessary health care. That is a violation of her human rights. It's not on. Okay?
Yeah.
If she had a kidney disorder, she'd be able to get treated. But because she's trans, she can't get the necessary treatments which are going to, improve the quality of her life and enable her to do more and contribute far more to society. Okay, this is something because a lot of you always get these people who say, oh well, there are parts of my body I'm dissatisfied with. Why can't I have cosmetic surgery? Look, first of all, okay, when you have dysphoria, it's not like you're dissatisfied with parts of your body. You want to kill yourself. Okay, it is extreme, right?
Well, it's essentially you're born into a body horror movie.
Yeah,
is the best way I've seen it described, and it's like your brain, like my brain is just like, nah, all those male parts, they're not supposed to be a part of your body. They're basically like parts that you need to pick off or remove. It's kind of
exactly. Ugh. Yeah. So, she's been prevented from getting vital health care. I really think this is not on. Okay? It's really not on. And, I mean, I don't know the full in and outs of this Bitcoin case. But what I do know is that the authorities are being transphobic towards her, and I will go into bat for her on this, definitely. So, spare a thought, and, if you want to donate, the link is below. Right. Now, okay. I mentioned this on Monday, but I I didn't have the actual tweet at the time, but I do have a copy of it now. So, Steve, so for those who might recall, Lawrence Fox made a comment about the Leicester players, Leicester City FC, who won the FA Cup at the weekend. That's a big soccer game, yeah.
Look, I'm aware of football,
yeah,
and the Vikings, the Green Bay. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so Leicester City won the FA Cup for the first time, and I would add, managed by Celtic's former manager Brendan Rodgers. In some ways, I was happy for Leicester City winning the FA Cup for the first time, but on the other hand, I was like grinding my teeth because Brendan Rodgers, left Celtic, and since he left Celtic, our fortunes have basically plummeted. So it was bittersweet for me. But anyways, these two Leicester players displayed the Palestinian flag in celebrations of Leicester City winning the FA Cup. And as I pointed out on Monday, Lawrence Fox got in a tizzy about it. Other right-wingers have got a tizzy about it. But particularly Stephen Pollard, who is the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, basically saying the FA needs to take immediate action to discipline them. To which my response was, but of course, the British government, the Israeli government, but of course you'd think that the Israeli government shouldn't face sanctions for committing war crimes, and that's the hypocrisy. Yeah, here are two players sticking up for people who are being murdered, and very. I mean, it's not being made homeless due to bombings, injured, being killed, whatever else, but just generally being persecuted for being Palestinians, because the fact is that the Israeli government are running an apartheid regime against the Palestinian people. There is no other way of saying it. So, yeah, a great deal of hypocrisy from the right, methinks. Anyways, there is a petition, and yet again the link is in the description down below, of basically for Parliament to debate bringing sanctions against Israel. And it's got so far 357,366 signatures, as you can see. Because it's got over 100,000 signatures, it will get debated in Parliament, right? But obviously, the more signatures this petition gets, the more weight it has. Okay?
Yeah.
Of course, people say, you'll dream on about there being sanctions against Israel for committing war crimes and running an apartheid regime. Well, one must try. And I do find it curious that the Tories back in the 80s supported the apartheid regime in South Africa, and now they're supporting the apartheid regime in Israel. It kind of gives you an impression that the Tories have a bit of a hard-on for apartheid regimes. Supporting them.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people say, people say it's not an apartheid regime, blah, 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 blah. Well, this is Andrew Feinstein, who, like myself, is a Jewish is a Jew from South Africa, but he has the accent still because that's essentially where he lived. He was actually an MP in the South African Parliament for a while, and he was friends with Nelson Mandela. Now let's have a listen to what he has to say about whether the Israeli government is operating an apartheid regime. If this thing will fucking play. What the fuck?
Boss Nelson Mandela, after 27 years in prison, emerged not to say that we are all free, but instead to say our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people and many Palestinian organizations were comrades of the ANC and other liberation movements in the struggle to end apartheid in South Africa. But what we have seen in Israel over the past few years, and more intensively over the past few days, is a degree of racism, a degree of brutality and inhumanity that I believe surpasses what the South African apartheid state did to the vast majority of our citizens. It is tragic for me as a Jew, the son of a Holocaust survivor who lost 39 members of her family in Auschwitz and Theresienstadt. As a South African who has seen at first hand, albeit from a position of privilege, bestowed on me only by the virtue of the accident of the color of my skin at birth, I have seen the consequences of racism and of apartheid.
I'll just interject here. The one MP there was in the South African Parliament during the apartheid regime was a woman called Helen Suzman. She was Jewish. She was the one MP who was opposed to the apartheid regime. Jews have had, Jews have had, have had a long history of fighting oppression. I just want to remind people of that. One of the leaders of the Warsaw uprising during the Second World War said Jews should always be with the oppressor, with the oppressed, not with the oppressors, and that's absolutely true. That's one of my favourite quotes.
Israel is a racist and apartheid state. Our governments in the United Kingdom, in the United States of America, across Europe, have to immediately embargo any form of arms sales, of military cooperation with the state of Israel. The lives of innocent, ordinary Palestinian people depend on it. And every minute that we don't do that is going to result in further death, further destruction, and further immiseration. The parallels, I think, have gone beyond what we experienced in South Africa. This is the South Africa of the 1960s, where unarmed women protesting against having to carry identification books were mowed down by apartheid policemen. This is actually killing women, children, and other innocent civilians in their homes, in their streets, randomly and wantonly. For all of us who regard ourselves as anti-racists, for all of us who reject the abuse of human rights, for all of us who defend the right to life of every human being, we have to stand up and take a stand against what the Israeli government is doing today and what the Israeli government has been doing since 1967 at least, and even before that. For, as my esteemed friend and Nobel Peace Laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this clip.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. That sort of echoes the Edmund Burke quote. All it takes for evil to take root is for good men not to act. I think that's how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I absolutely hate fence sitters. I really do. Yeah. Both sides banners one another. Hold on. I'm not denying that Hamas haven't got rockets, because they do, but
yeah, and they killed 10 people, including 2 children, and Israeli went and killed 212 people, including 61 children.
Yes, the fact is it's completely mismatched. Yes, Hamas have some rockets, but the Israeli army are one of the most well-equipped, advanced armies in the fucking world. They've got fucking nukes. Okay?
Yeah.
Right. Now, Jeremy Corbyn basically had a few words to say about what's going on. I'm sure he was going to well, he was actually at the protest in London on Saturday, and despite the COVID-19 pandemic, 100,000 people turned up. Now, there have been far bigger, demonstrations in the past for various other things, including the 2 million people who marched through London against the invasion of Iraq, which I was on. And obviously I've been to anti-cut marches, which have been bigger. But the fact that at the moment, a lot of people are still, generally scared to, be up close and personal with people because of COVID. I think that's a pretty amazing figure, 100,000. Yeah. So, anyways, this is what Jeremy Corbyn had to say, and he's absolutely right.
Issue is that the Palestinian people have been under occupation. And that means ending the occupation, ending the settlements, removing the settlements, ending the siege of Gaza, and also recognizing the rights of Palestinian refugees who've lived their whole lives in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq. Every country all around the Gulf, there are Palestinian refugees who have lived their whole lives like that. I went to Sabra and Shantillah some years ago with the late Sir Gerald Kaufman, who was then a Labour MP. He's passed on now. And he was a Jewish man, was actually, for much of his life, very pro-Israel. And he was more and more disgusted at the treatment by the Israeli forces of Palestinian.
I think it was Gerald Kaufman who described the Israeli Defense Force as acting like the SS. And this caused, of course, something like that is going to, cause quite a lot of, a lot of people are going to go, oh, it's really offensive to say. Well, Gerald Kaufman is a Jew himself who would be very well aware of the implications of what he was saying. I don't want to try to avoid making comparisons with Nazi Germany, but I can understand why people do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the more
it's just a problem when it gets extrapolated to
one of the more I actually, funny enough, one of my something which is bad, a lot of people say of Netanyahu, and the first person I ever heard say this was actually a Jew. So before anyone accuses me of anti-Semitism, remember that, okay? Basically, they said, "Oh, Netanyahu is basically doing Lebensbrand." Now, for those who don't know what that is, okay, and I don't know if I've actually pronounced it properly. Christy Winters says I don't pronounce that properly, and she does live in Germany, so she would know. Hitler had.
I assume it would be something like. Wait. Let me look at the actual spelling. Go on.
It's Rem.
It's Lebensraum.
Lebensraum, yeah, that's it. Which is room to breathe, or room to live, isn't it? And this was Hitler's excuse for invading Eastern Europe. He wanted space for the Germanic people to live. Well, the comparison, obviously, people are making with the Netanyahu government is all the illegal settlements, which are forcing out, Palestinian people, and they do operate like the apartheid regime in South Africa operated. Yeah, you'd have some black township suddenly, and all of a sudden, who were minding their own business and trying to get on with life in an oppressive regime, and all of a sudden, the Israeli, the South African government would say, right, that's an illegal settlement, and they would be forcefully evicted and moved on. Well, this is happening to Palestinian families. With the current spat between the Israeli Defense Force and Hamas, started with forced, right-wing Zionists trying to forcefully evict Palestinian families in East Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So,
people, and we went to the refugee camps in Lebanon together. I've never forgotten meeting an old man whose whole life, since being a very small child, had been in this refugee camp since 1948. His whole life. And he had this dream that one day he'd be able to return to the village he was expelled from in 1948. And so there is a big human story here, and I think that has to be said. But the events of the past week have been unbelievable and extraordinary. As Mustafa said, there are no rockets being fired from the West Bank. People have been killed on the West Bank. The Israeli occupation forces are destroying homes, destroying families, destroying people. The bombing of Gaza is incredible. You have first world military planes bombing Gaza and destroying those buildings. And that building that was destroyed today, which contained the Al Jazeera and Associated Press studios and offices, that was scientifically destroyed by an air raid. The big building was destroyed the other day, contained many other organizations. I've been in those buildings during the...
He's referring to the Associated Press office, which was rocketed by the Israeli Defense Force, saying that they were harboring Hamas operatives. Well, if they're harboring Hamas operatives and equipment, then why did they give an hour's warning to the Associated Press to get out of the building? Wouldn't, the Hamas operatives scarper, with their equipment quick, within that hour? Yeah, it's bullshit. Time and time again, we hear this from, whatever Israeli government spokesperson, that, Hamas are harbor, Hamas, are using civilian shields, and whatever else, the buildings they bomb are, have, are where Hamas, are operating, blah, 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 blah. And, and in the aftermath, it's discovered, oh, no, that's not true. And we've had, I remember a few years ago when Israel were bombing southern Lebanon, they actually bombed a Red Cross building and a UN building, saying, "Oh, well, Hezbollah." There was no Hezbollah around those fucking no Hezbollah, people around those fucking buildings.
Yep.
Visits to Gaza in the past. There can be no possible justification under any rules for that. Israel is in breach of the Fourth Geneva Convention. Israel is in breach of its obligations as an occupying power. And the world has got to wake up. And that means ending military cooperation with Israel. And I have questions for the British government on the degree of military cooperation with Israel. Ending all arms supplies and arms imports from Israel. Because what we see is the destruction of the lives of Palestinian people. Today in London, over 100,000 people marched it was in fact very hard to get to the stage to deliver my speech today because the crowds were so dense all down Kensington High Street. That was London. There was also demonstrations in Liverpool, in every major city, in Scotland and in Wales, all over Britain. And so 100,000 is the London figure, but to that you should add many more. Why were they there? They were there because they are human beings with sympathy and support and recognition that there has to be a political solution, and that requires the British government to act by recognizing unilaterally, unconditionally, totally recognizing the state of Palestine. To do that at the United Nations, as many other countries have done, and go through the points that I made about settlements, end the siege, and have some regard for the needs and rights of refugees. So I think the world has become more aware over the last day. Now, I'll finish on this point because obviously you need to bring in Andrew and others. But the decision to destroy a building containing the offices of two major media organizations, Al Jazeera and Associated Press, that is an attack on those that report what is going on in Gaza.
Yeah, because the Israeli Defense Force do not want to be held accountable for their actions. They don't want journalists snooping around while they're committing war crimes.
Yeah.
I've been to Gaza on a number of occasions, and I've met people, I've met young people, I've met children, I've visited schools, I've been in lots of places in Gaza, and it's the most educated place in the world. I think 2/3 of the population have university degrees. Unemployment is even higher at 70%. It's very strange being in this educated enclave, living under permanent fear. Insufficiency of water, insufficiency of electricity, insufficiency of medical care.
Well, essentially, Gaza is the world's biggest open-air prison. Yeah, I'm not going to pull my punches.
Yeah.
And you know, when you have an oppressive regime doing that to people, you know, they're going to support the people who are going to fight back, who happen to be Hamas. Now, I despise Hamas because, well, they would have me thrown off a building, not for just being Jewish, but for being LGBTQ.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the thing. If the Israeli government had any sense, they would grant equal rights to all Palestinians, right? And try and have them integrate into Israeli society. Hold on, because you know, when they're oppressing them as they are backing extremists. Okay?
Oh, yeah. I just mean I can picture the Israeli government utilizing similar propaganda that the alt-right uses to try to suggest, because they don't want the Palestinians to replace Jewish people in. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, we saw that clip on Monday of
not wanting Jews to marry
Arabs.
Yeah, it was bad. It was really bad.
Yeah, that organization, was it Lehiva? They also don't like LGBTQ people, by the way.
Shock.
As I said, this is if any LGBTQ person is watching and wondering why the fuck is an LGBTQ focused stream going on about what's happening in the Middle East. Well, this is because bigotry is intersectional. Okay, me and OZMA also happen to be Jewish and despair at the actions of the Israeli government. And I kind of think we both need to cathartically release, basically we need to express, our despair.
Yeah. Although I'm personally despairing over Tennessee right now, but that's another story.
Oh, I haven't got that in the running order.
It's bad.
Right.
Good old legal hate crimes.
Anyways, this is another story. Now this one's it's curious. Let's get into it. It's just to do with Bella Hadid, who is she's a model of Palestinian descent, and the Israeli government have been trying to smear her. So let's get into this.
Models. She's also Palestinian American and one of the most high-profile advocates for Palestinian rights in the United States. This has made her a target of Israel, and specifically the official Twitter account for the State of Israel, which this weekend claimed Hadid had advocated throwing Jews into the sea. When celebrities like Bella Hadid advocate for throwing Jews into the sea, they are advocating for the elimination of the Jewish state. This shouldn't be an Israeli-Palestinian issue. This should be a human issue. Shame on you.
I think they've mistaken Hadid for Hamas. I would expect that the Hamas, their banter is chase all Jews into the Mediterranean. I know that, but not this particular individual, as you'll see.
Hashtag Israel under attack. Now, this is a really, really serious accusation. Now,
hold on. Israel under attack. Sorry. Who's actually demolishing buildings?
Is that Israel? Is it? I mean, like, for one thing, it's not a simple one-sided attack. A lot of it is an attack happened, and then the Israeli government ordered a murder spree.
Yeah.
Bella Hadid, she has 42 million followers, by the way. If she told her 42 million Instagram followers that Jews should be thrown into the sea, I mean, she should obviously be rightly condemned, and presumably she'd lose, a lot of her modelling contracts and sponsorship deals. And this is a very, very extreme accusation. Now, the problem is, she didn't say it. The video that the Israel account was linking to, the screenshot they showed you, was of a live stream by Bella Hadid on her Instagram. Now, it was watched live by 57,000 people, and in the video, the supermodel can be seen chanting on a pro-Palestine march in Brooklyn, New York. Let's take a look at the video. You can see if you can see what the Israel Twitter account saw in this video.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea!
Nowhere in that video did Bella Hadid advocate for throwing Jewish people in the sea. The official Israel account was called out on this, and they replied that the offending statement was at 22 seconds. At 22 seconds, Hadid said the following: "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." That's definitely not calling for any Jews to be thrown into the sea, by the way. I mean, I think that's clear enough. But we should talk about the background to this statement, because this is a statement which is often chanted at Palestine marches and which has created some controversy. Now, there's been a long-running campaign by the Israeli government and advocates of Israel to say this is either anti-Semitic or offensive or divisive or whatever.
No. It's not anti-Semitic.
Well, I mean, they're chanting for freedom.
Yeah, well, you'll see.
Like saying let
this
freedom.
this actually
like saying,
well this chant
freedom
actually
bring
this chant
is
this chant actually comes from something Yasser Arafat said, um, as Michael will explain.
And I want to explain why they say that and why I think it's actually a fine chant. Right. So let's look at the meaning of what it means literally. So this is a map of Israel-Palestine. So the river is the Jordan River. The sea is the Mediterranean Sea. And what people who sing this chant are saying is, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, that includes what is now the West Bank and Gaza. It also includes what's now Israel. And why people think this is controversial is because they're saying it would mean there would be no Israel. If from the river to the sea, Palestine is free, then where does Israel fit into that story? That's how, if you're really, really reaching, you say, oh, well, where's Israel going to be? You're clearly going to throw them in the sea. That's why you've mentioned the sea. That's the reach, and that's completely ridiculous. Also, though, I mean, this doesn't even mean, to my mind, what, some people say, oh, this means you're going to expel the Jews. It doesn't. It historically hasn't, and it also doesn't in the present. So essentially what that chant is saying is advocating for a one-state solution. Now, some people don't support a one-state solution. Some people support a two-state solution. That's completely fine. But it is also important to be clear what a one-state solution would mean in this context. And historically, for the PLO, for the Palestinian Liberation Organization, what it has meant is a secular democratic state where everyone has one vote, one person, one vote. There isn't a Jewish state and a Palestinian, well, there isn't a Jewish state and an Arab state. There's just Palestine. And anyone in Palestine can have one vote. Jews can have one vote. Palestinians, Arabs can have one vote. Christians can have one vote. It's a secular state. Now, this used to be the position of Yasser Arafat and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. This is what Yasser Arafat said to the UN in 1974. At this point, he was in favor of a one-state solution. So he said, when we speak of our common hopes for the Palestine of tomorrow, we include in our perspective all Jews now living in Palestine who choose to live with us there in peace and without discrimination. So it was very clear. At that point, he was backing from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And he was saying, no one's going to get thrown in the sea, right? Anyone who wants to live here can live here, and they can have one vote.
Yeah. Seems pretty reasonable to me. Now, couple of things in response to this. I have had friends on the left who have floated the one-state solution, saying that, what is Israel should be should be a Palestinian should be Palestine as a secular state, and that might go some way to resolving the issue, right? Obviously, it wouldn't be enough for Hamas and Hezbollah. Okay, there's always going to be militants. Okay, on both sides, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Like, there are going to be people who aren't going to be happy with there being freedom for all.
Right. Interestingly, I was watching a debate there was on the Israeli advocacy movement's channel. It was Joseph Cohen, who I do consider to be a racist, and I mean he's a militant Zionist for starters. He was debating a Palestinian activist, and basically Joseph seems to think he says, "Oh, I'm all for peace with the Palestinians," but he seems to want it on Israeli terms. He kept going, I don't want to be living as a demi under Arabs. That tells you the attitude, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right? That they're scared. They're scared. You see, this is the kind of stuff I used to hear from white Afrikaners, right? About dismantling apartheid. They always said, the blacks they'll want retribution. Yeah, obviously there was a minority who did, and I can understand why a lot of black people would be angry to white people in South Africa due to the oppression of the apartheid regime. But you did that have white people on the whole been slaughtered and murdered by blacks in revenge for apartheid in South Africa? No. Sure, there are economic problems which are causing a high crime rates, because one of the consequences of the apartheid regime was that it left South Africa as one of the most economically one of the countries with the greatest amount of economic inequality, and obviously when you have that sort of situation, it does lead to social unrest, unfortunately. But the point is, I don't think that most Palestinians are going to go round chopping the heads off of Jews if they get equal rights. Okay, if they get a say in the government, of that land, right? The other thing that I love my lefty friends have said about the two-state solution. I mean, I've said that the two-state solution is not viable because of the amount of land grabs that the Israeli government has turned a blind eye to with the illegal settlements. But even if it was viable, a lot of my lefty friends have said that one of the problems is it falls into the whole ethno-state bullshit of the far right, because what you will have is Palestinians live in live in the West Bank and Gaza, and the Jews live in the rest of in Israel. And I kind of think that is a bit still seems kind of an apartheid sort of thing going on there. I can understand what they're saying. Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't think many people have a solution for what's going on in Israel at the moment. But I think that the thing they need to do, first of all, is everyone put their fucking guns down and start talking.
Yeah.
Anyways, now here's a rarity in US media, news media. Basically, a host of MSNBC actually saying that Palestinians have a right to defend themselves. You don't hear this often, do you?
Let's make one thing clear. Israel has a right to exist and to defend itself. That is an indisputable fact.
And I don't dispute that. I don't dispute that the Israeli government don't have a duty to defend its citizens. Yeah, but it should do so proportionately to the threat. Okay. Yeah, and as OZMA'S already read out, rocket attacks have killed from Hamas have killed what's about half a dozen.
10 Israelis reported dead in the past week, including 2 children.
Right. Whereas
and several injured. I'm sure there's probably like 100 injured. It wouldn't surprise me. And with Palestinians, 212 dead, including 61 children, and 1,500 Palestinians have been wounded by the attacks.
Plus, there's also the infrastructure damage.
Yes, there's the infrastructure damage as well, which there was severe infrastructure damage
in Gaza. Yeah,
but so do Palestinians. And that's a fact that's often ignored. Palestinians are, at best, third-class citizens in the nation of their birth. The idea that it's even remotely controversial to call what Israel has imposed on Palestinians a form of apartheid is laughable. One look at a current map of Israel, Gaza, and the occupied territories conjures up only one other example: apartheid-era South Africa. The Israeli government, on an ongoing basis, declares parcels of land on which Palestinians live to be either of military or archaeological importance, causing residents to be evicted. Sometimes there's a court case, and almost always the Palestinians lose. Yet months or weeks later, that same important land suddenly becomes home to a brand new Israeli settlement. As more and more Jewish settlers take over land on which Arabs live, the occupied West Bank becomes de facto more Israeli, and in the explicit hopes of the Israeli government, more Jewish. This is a long-standing attempt, and a deliberate attempt, to force Arabs who have lived in that land, sometimes for hundreds of years, out. It's an attempt to dilute their presence, because to have Arabs as full participants is, in the opinion of the Israeli government and their courts, diluting Israel. Just prior to the pandemic, I toured many of the contested areas and homes from which Arabs are being...
Diluting Israel. Oh, that's son of
yeah, that's
dodgy ground. Yeah. Yes. You know, if you're going to talk about the Jewish race as in the, in the same, parlance as the master race, you are becoming what you, say you hate.
Yeah.
That is really ominous language. I do not like.
Being pushed out, both in Israel proper and in the occupied territories. Palestinians don't control the important parts of their lives. Palestinian families are refused permits to build or renovate their homes. When they connect their homes to the municipal water supply, Israeli soldiers sometimes cut the pipes. When they attempt to harness solar energy because their homes are not on the grid, Israeli soldiers literally come and remove solar panels from their homes. I spent an hour and a half traveling alongside an elderly Palestinian woman who was being transferred between 3 ambulances from Gaza to the no man's land in between and then into Israel to get cancer treatment. 3 ambulances over the course of 1 mile, more than an hour to cross the border. That's how Gazans live. Without medical treatment because Israel prevents it. Without electricity.
Yeah, and also they haven't, when it comes to the COVID vaccines, I remember there were all these reports earlier this year about, look at how fast the Israelis have rolled out the vaccine program, and it was like, but they haven't given any assistance to the Palestinians when it comes to vaccines, have they?
No. Why would they?
Yeah, and which would be the humane thing to do.
Much of the time because Israel prevents it.
Next, you're going to say that the Israelis should follow, some of the tenets laid out in the Torah. That might be asking too much.
Yeah.
Without the ability to fish in the Mediterranean Ocean because Israel prevents it. Without an airport or a seaport because Israel prevents it. Like Israelis, Palestinians also have a right to exist and to defend themselves. But there is no one willing to help them do that. Not the Israeli courts, and not the U.S. government. What the U.S. also shares with Israel is the belief that Hamas, the political party that governs Gaza, is a terrorist organization that calls for the destruction of Israel. Hamas is supported by the majority of Palestinians in Gaza. Hamas may not be in the best long-term interests of the Gazans, but peace hasn't really worked out for them. Faced with an Israeli government which pens them into what has been called the world's largest open-air prison, they have chosen a government that most of us wouldn't prefer. One that is not given to negotiation and moderation and respect for its neighbor. Israel needs a new approach to the Palestinians, and America needs a new approach to Israel. After more than 7 decades of not just being deprived of land from which they were evicted, Palestinian frustration runs deep. It may be worth going deeper than what you may hear inside your bubble and understanding the depth to which the Palestinian people are subject to apartheid in their own land, deprived of basic necessities, and subject to relentless civil rights violations. This is not a secret. It's out there for you to see. You just have to look for it.
Now that's one of the best monologues I've heard on any news channel about what's going on. He concisely summed it up. Yeah. Now, talking about news channels, Netanyahu, the war criminal, was on Face the Nation. And we're going to get into this. Even if it means me pulling out my hair.
Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you for being with us.
No, it's good morning, Mr. War Criminal. What's happened here?
I don't know.
Good morning.
I want to start with yesterday was the worst clash in this 7-day conflict. The last one of a similar sort in 2014 lasted 6 weeks. How much longer are these hostilities going to continue?
Well, we hope that it doesn't continue very long, but we were attacked by Hamas on our National Day, Jerusalem Day, attacks, unprovoked attacks on Jerusalem, and then thousands of rockets and missiles on our cities.
Neglecting to mention the forced evictions of Palestinians from East Jerusalem. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, that was the provocation.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, and it wasn't unprovoked.
And I think any country has to defend itself. It has a natural right of self-defense. We'll do whatever it takes to restore order and quiet and the security of our people and deterrence. We're trying to degrade Hamas's terrorist abilities and to degrade their will to do this again. So it'll take some time. I hope it won't take long, but it's not immediate.
2,900 rockets fired on Hamas, according to fired from Hamas, according to one report. But there's also a report that Egypt offered a truce. Hamas said yes. You said no. Why?
Well, that's not what I know.
Whoops,
and frankly, if Hamas thought that they could just fire on our rockets and then sit back and enjoy immunity, that's false. We are targeting a terrorist organization that is targeting our civilians and hiding.
Right. I've had other Israeli spokespeople say that they will not stop until Gaza is silent. That's kind of ominous.
Yeah.
That sort of language.
Yeah.
Their civilians, using them as human shields. We're doing everything we can to.
There's no proof of that.
Yeah.
We've heard this time and time again from the Israeli government.
Yeah, well, I mean, that clearly justifies killing of 61 children.
Have hit the terrorists themselves, their rockets, their rocket caches, and their arms, but we're not going to just let them get away with it. Neither would you. I mean, you just imagine what would have happened if you had 2,900 rockets fired on Washington and New York and others. I think you would understand our position. I think you do, actually.
The precision of that targeting has been up for question. There's been a lot of focus on the bombing on Saturday in Gaza of a building that housed the Associated Press and Al Jazeera. The Committee to Protect Journalists demanded detailed and documented justification. This morning, there's a Jerusalem Post story that says the Americans were shown a smoking gun, that proof that Hamas was in that building. What is that proof? And did you show it to the Americans?
Well, we share with our American friends all that intelligence, and here's the intelligence we had. It's about Palestinian terrorist, an intelligence office for the Palestinian terrorist organization housed in that building that plots and organizes the terror attacks against Israeli civilians. So it's a perfectly legitimate target.
Yeah, but that's not proof. You've just said that that's what it is, but you haven't presented any proof. You just said, "Oh, there's proof out there. I definitely gave proof," but like you haven't answered the question yet.
And I can tell you that we took every precaution to make sure that there were no civilian injuries. In fact, no deaths, no injuries whatsoever. Well, I can't say injuries. I don't know if somebody received a fragment of a stone.
You've killed 60+ children. You've got blood on your hands.
Yeah, and
don't give me that shit about how we've gone out of our way to prevent collateral fucking damage. You have caused collateral fucking damage. You have killed innocent children.
I don't know that, but no people are killed. Now imagine, ask yourself, how is that possible? You see these high-rise towers that are used by Hamas over and over again, they collapse and no one is killed. Why does that happen? Because we, unlike Hamas, take special precautions to tell people, leave the building, leave the premises. We make sure that everyone is gone before we bring down those terrorist facilities. And that's the difference between Israel and Hamas. They deliberately target our cities, deliberately target our civilians. They glorify the death of children and civilians and old people. They are happy.
Hold on. So rocketing the Associated Press wasn't deliberate?
Well, not just that. So he's saying that because there was that one building was the one that he mentioned that got mentioned ahead of time. Now the other buildings that have been bombed down by Israeli Air Force strikes, and have killed, tons of civilians, and the Israeli people cheering that on. I don't think the Palestinians are cheering this shit on, but I've heard a lot of Israeli citizens doing that, and this just comes off as creepy projection. And even if it's a small number of Israeli citizens, technically it's too many celebrating the deaths of Palestinian women and children.
Happy with it. I think they're happy with any deaths that are caused to them. We grieve for every non-combatant loss in Gaza, and we grieve for all our...
No, you don't, and your supporters don't, because me and Ozma have in a previous stream when you ordered the killing of 50 Palestinians at the Gaza border. When was that? 2017, 2018, right? There was some progressive Jews decided to hold Kiddush, which is the prayer for the dead, outside the Houses of Parliament. What happened? Joseph Cohen and his bunch of Zionist racist trolls turned up to disrupt things. So don't fucking say that to me. You don't mourn their death. You want to drive the Palestinians out of their own land. That is what you want to do. And if it means killing all of them, so you just don't care. Just as long as they're gone.
Civilians who die in this war, we're not happy with it, and we try to minimize it.
I want to get to minimizing those casualties, but you spoke with President Biden yesterday. It's inconceivable you would have talked to him and not shared proof of Hamas in those buildings that housed the journalists. Did you share that with him?
Well, we pass it through the intelligence services to our people, to those people. Why do you think we brought down that building? The interesting thing is, I would say that, all the journalists, one of the, I think, AP journalists said, we were lucky to get out. No, you weren't lucky to get out. It wasn't luck. It's because we took special pains to call people in those buildings.
It's like some thug saying, I'll give you an hour's notice before I throw a brick through your window. And me saying, oh, I was lucky I didn't get covered in glass. No! You shouldn't have done it in the fucking first place.
Well, yeah, but also I love that dodge. It's just like, well, I can't imagine, because you talked with Biden, I can't imagine you wouldn't mention this super important information that's proof of it. And he's just like, well, no, it's all through, intelligence agencies. It's all, a secret side thing, and blah-blah-blah, blah-blah-fucking-blah. I mean, the building's already been fucking bombed down. It's not like there needs to be, you need to be fucking secretive if you genuinely had a proof of your to support your claims.
To make sure that the premises were vacated, and that's why we brought down that building. And look, you have your own experiences, I think, in Mosul, in Fallujah, in Afghanistan. I think you can appreciate the efforts we go through in dense urban fighting when terrorists are targeting civilians who are hiding behind civilians, how difficult that is. We do our best to avoid civilian casualties, and we did that yesterday with that building as well.
Mr. Prime Minister, the arguments about how careful Israel have been are familiar ones to your critics. And in this case, with 181 Palestinians dead, 52 of them children, there's significant criticism. Amnesty International has asked the International Criminal Court to look into a refugee camp attack. The UN is meeting today. Foreign ministers of the EU are meeting. And the response has been like this one from the Foreign Minister of Ireland. Israel has international legal obligation to protect children in conflict and are not doing so.
No, they're killing them. I think that's
I mean, they're acceptable casualties to the Israeli government, and that's a problem. I mean, they say it's not an acceptable casualty, but it seems like, based on the percentages, it seems almost like the Palestinians are doing a better job not killing children in this conflict, but
that's just a false. I mean, the reason we have these casualties is because Hamas is criminally attacking us from civilian neighborhoods, from schools, from homes, from office buildings. That's what they're doing.
But
and we're taking action, trying.
Hold on. Right, I've said this before on this stream. Okay, I'm going to say it again. Right, the Israeli army is one of the most advanced in the world. Right, Mossad is one of the best secret service agencies that around the globe. You'd think that they'd be able to surgically deal with this, okay?
A sniper can take out a person with a rocket launcher.
Yeah.
It's
you don't have
to bomb a school filled with children to remove threats, even if they were. This is assuming that they were attacking from a school, because that's the only thing that makes sense. If criminals are attacking from a school, generally you don't bomb the whole goddamn school. You send in special forces and have them eliminate targets. I mean, this is why we have like SWAT teams. The whole point of SWAT teams. Okay, so SWAT teams might not be the best example considering how flagrant they're used, but the how SWAT teams should be used is to do something that's not bombing a place. America shouldn't be better at not killing civilians than, well, I mean, with drone strikes. I'm not making a good argument, but it's still fucked up.
To target them with as great precision as we can. Unfortunately, there are occasionally civilian casualties, which we regret. But here's what happens. When the international community attacks Israel, they're actually encouraging Hamas to continue these attacks, because Hamas says, it's great. We're both killing Israeli civilians, and unfortunately some of ours, and they're happy with their own civilian casualties because it gets the international community to focus their attacks on Israel instead of Hamas. That's wrong.
Sure.
It's both wrong and unproductive.
It's the other consequence of the Israeli Defense Force bombing the shit out of Gaza. The amount of anti-Semitic abuse being reported has shot up. And Keir Starmer did raise this at Prime Minister's questions today, but he neglected to mention the cause. Now, there is a video, you can find it on Twitter, of some imbecile in a car going around St. John's Wood, where there's a lot of where a lot of Jews live, and flying a Palestinian flag and basically shouting anti-Semitic abuse. Now, of course, some Zionists are saying, oh, well, this is typical of Palestinian activists. No, it's not. Okay? It's not at all. Right?
Yeah.
But this is people angrily lashing out at inhumane actions. Now, as I say, I will not condone anyone spouting anti-Semitic abuse, because no British Jew is responsible for the actions of that war criminal you see in front of you and his government. Okay?
Yeah.
But I have to acknowledge the cause, and basically, the Israeli government are helping to whip, anti-Semitism up. Which, in some ways, there is conspiracy theories, and some people have this conspiracy theory that, that's what they want to do actually, because that'll encourage Jews to move to Israel. No. I have no interest in moving to Israel, and neither does OZMA, I don't think.
No, I would not want to move to Israel. Israel's a terrible place for LGBTQ rights. For one, not the worst place for LGBTQ rights. It's okay. I say with quotation marks.
Well,
because
the Israeli, there's a thing called pink washing, which is usually subscribed to the Israeli government's saying, "Oh, look at us, we're really LGBTQ friendly." Yeah, but you still kill innocent Palestinians. But the other problem is you do have the religious right in Israel, the uber Orthodox Jews, and they are certainly not LGBTQ friendly. They counter protest, pride marches and whatever else, and there has been physical violence at pride parades in Israel. Orchestrated by these groups.
Because actually, what it does is prolong the conflict and escalate and increase the number of casualties that happen as a result of the continuation.
No, what's prolonging this the conflict is the fact that you're the head of an apartheid regime, which is persecuting Palestinians, and Palestinians are angry that they are being persecuted for purely being Palestinian.
Of the conflict.
The question, Mr. Prime Minister, is U.S. Secretary of State Tony Blinken said that Israel has an extra burden, that Israel, because of its strength and power and dominance, has an extra burden on these question of casualties. The question is whether Israel is meeting its extra burden in responding to these rocket attacks from Hamas.
Certainly are. And I can tell you that there have been many studies by serious military analysts who have compared Israel's actions with that of other Western armies in similar situations fighting radical Islamists, whether it's in Iraq or in Afghanistan or elsewhere. And you know how prolonged those conflicts are, how many casualties are caused. So I think there has to be a measure of fairness. There has to be a measure of reasonableness.
Oh, well, we're going to talk about fairness and reasonableness. How about doing that in your treatment towards the Palestinians, huh? Oh, no, you don't believe that. You don't believe in fairness and reasonableness when it comes to, affording Palestinians justice and equality, do you? Nah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the thing is, he's already basically stated Palestine as if it was, an enemy of Israel.
And projecting this kind of criticism against the Israeli army that is second to none in seeking to minimize civilian casualties while protecting our own civilians. If Hamas would simply move these rockets out of the civilian areas, if they moved their command posts out of these homes and offices, then there wouldn't be any problem.
Let me ask you, Mr. Prime Minister.
But the fact is, they're sending thousands of rockets on our cities with a specific purpose of murdering our civilians from these places.
Let me ask you, Mr.
What would you do?
Let me ask
if it happened to Washington or to New York? You know damn well what you do.
Let me ask you
at the very least what we're doing.
Let me ask you a broader question that was articulated by Senator Bernie Sanders, which is distinct from the clashes over the last week. His argument is that the treatment of the Palestinians is so rough that they are marginalized, demonized in such a fashion that there can never be peace, never be a two-state solution.
Bernie Sanders is right.
Wait, are you saying the Jewish socialist is right about peace and,
He can't be Jewish. He's speaking out against Israel.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I forgot.
Yeah. There are people who do. I'm not kidding. I mean, Bernie is Jewish, but there are people who dispute that he's Jewish because he speaks out against
the Israeli government. Yeah.
Yes, and their supporters.
That your treatment of the Palestinians outside of this week creates conditions that are always going to lead to this kind of unrest, not just the missile attacks, but the riots you see in cities. What's your response to that?
Well, let's divide it into two. First of all, the Hamas is not attacking us because they're trying to increase the welfare of Palestinians. In fact, they're taking.
Oh, by the way, folks, if you notice, you can find him on Twitter at Netanyahu. So, you know where you can send your criticism, where you can direct your criticism to.
Yeah. Also, he's answering a question that wasn't asked.
Typical.
Taking
Yeah.
huge sums to build the terror tunnels, which we've been able to neutralize, to have rockets, missiles, and other armaments. They're not building up Gaza. They're doing everything in their power to turn it into a fortified terror camp in order to destroy Israel. And they openly say their goal is to destroy Israel. They're not interested in any kind of coexistence, any kind of the kind of peace, the 4 peace treaties that
You know something? He's concentrating purely on Gaza here. The fact is, there have been reports that Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank.
Yeah.
And of course, it's under the which is where there is Fatah, the Palestinian Authority. Yeah. And there's been no
Hamas.
And there's been no. Yeah, he seems to want to make out the whole that all Palestinians are being ruled by Hamas. They're not. That's the point I'm trying to make. And there aren't any rockets coming from the West Bank yet. You know, the Israeli Defense Force are killing Palestinians there.
have made with Arab countries that are changing the Middle East. They're trying everything in their power to avoid the path of peace and reconciliation. So I think any objective observer understands that Hamas is out to destroy the state of Israel, and they're not a partner. As far as the citizens of Israel or Arabs, I've done more than any other prime minister and spent billions and billions of dollars in Israeli shekels, and 5 times more than all the previous governments combined, to ensure that our Israeli Arab citizens, all of them, can be part of the Israeli miracle, the great economic success story. I've invested that because I believe in it. I didn't do it now, and I didn't do it for CBS Face the Nation. I really believe in this. There has been a minority, a violent minority, that has tried to challenge that as well and to kill
Mr. Prime Minister,
innocent people. I won't tolerate that. Neither Arabs killing Israelis or Jews killing Arabs or Arabs killing Jews.
Let me ask, I want you to...
Well, that's funny, because why is it the Israeli Defense Force always seems to turn a blind eye to militant Zionists physically attacking Palestinians?
Well, I mean, also done so much for them, evicted plenty of Palestinians from their homes. Done so much good, right?
Yeah.
One other thing before we go, which is your domestic challenges. You are under investigation for bribery, fraud, breach of trust. You've also had some difficulty for failed attempts to put together a government in the last 23 months. This leads to the criticism that your current actions are basically an effort to stay in power. And what's your response to that?
No shit! I think he's got it nailed there. Yeah.
That's preposterous.
No, it's fucking not. He's on trial for corruption.
Yeah.
So he's trying to do everything to deflect from that.
Yeah.
When I was a young soldier, 18 years old, I held a fellow soldier who died in my arms. A few years later, my older brother, died while leading a rescue mission in Entebbe, Uganda, to release Israeli hostages. I've seen comrades fall. I've seen my brother fall. And I think anybody who knows me knows that I've never, ever subordinated security concerns, the life of our soldiers, the life of our citizens, for political interests. That's just hogwash. I'll do what I have to do to protect the lives of Israeli citizens and to restore peace. I've made peace with 4 Arab countries. I'm glad that we have a restoration of some considerable calm within Israel. That's my goal, to restore peace and quiet and to assure tranquility and reconciliation for all.
But this is a persistent criticism, Mr. Prime Minister. Why do you think it persists?
It persists because I've been re-elected 5 times. It persists because I beat every other candidate in public polls and in direct election simulation.
Oh, right, because he's successful, everyone's jealous. Is that it? Not that, of
Yeah,
course,
that's
he's
the
got...
argument he's making.
Yeah, look at me. I'm brilliant and you hate me for it. What arrogant, narcissistic shit.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. Now, there's another marginalised bunch of people, particularly in this country. We're going to focus on the Gypsy, Roma and Traveller community here. So, we've covered on this channel the latest Tory policing bill, which would take away the right to protest, ostensibly, away from ordinary citizens. Well, as well as that, it would further persecute the Gypsy, Roma and Traveller community. Now, a guy called Jake Bowers was on the Politics Live this afternoon. And, well, he basically called it as it is. And I've seen this guy on give various interviews, and he is a really good advocate for gypsies. So let's have a listen to what he has to say.
Fair enough. That's fine. We're going to move on and talk about the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, or a specific part of it, I should say. It's going through Parliament at the moment. It's already proved to be controversial, and we've discussed many bits of it. Today, we're going to talk about a part of the bill that is also attracting some controversy and criticism, and the fact that the police will be given new powers to deal with trespass and unauthorised encampments, and this particularly affects those in the traveller community. Now, we can be joined, I think, by Jake Bowers, a Romani gypsy and activist from Drive to Survive, a campaign coordinating peaceful protest against the bill, and a former Labour Party member. Welcome to you, Jake. Later today, you'll be outlining your concerns about the bill to a committee of MPs and peers. Why do you want the government to look again at what it's proposing?
We don't just want to look at it again, we want to get rid of part 4 of the bill because it does some horrific things to our culture. Let me just outline some of those for you. It will entirely eradicate nomadic life for gypsies and travellers in Britain. It will give police the power to seize gypsy and traveller homes. It will fine gypsies and travellers who are nomadic up to £2,500. And if that wasn't bad enough, it will give the government the power to imprison those needing to follow a nomadic way of life through no fault of their own because there's a lack.
So essentially, gypsies and travellers would be jailed for carrying on their peaceful traditions of a nomadic life. Now, let me just say, well, the OZMA already knows this. You'll find a lot of Jews will stick up for the gypsy community. And one statistic here is that though the Nazis and the Holocaust killed more Jews overall, they killed a larger percentage of the Gypsy and Roma community.
Yeah.
And you'll, believe it or not, I've already mentioned the Jewish Chronicle, the editor earlier on. But I remember when Dale Farm happened, and that was 10 years ago. I can't believe that was 10 years ago. We'll talk about Dale Farm in a moment. But the Jewish Chronicle, which is a relatively conservative newspaper, came out to support the gypsies at Dale Farm. The Jews and gypsies have been, particularly on the continent, European continent, have been, over the centuries, a very marginalised and persecuted, groups of people.
of sites in this country. It is a cultural cleansing of the British landscape, which will be thoroughly resisted by the Gypsy and Traveller community. And what the Tory party is...
Yeah, it is. It is cultural cleansing. You see, the Tories are such fucking hypocrites, right? They talk about individual liberty, individual freedom, but they persecute anybody they consider undesirable, who don't live the way, they reckon people should live.
Yeah.
Doing is they're creating a coalition of the great unwashed in their view, and there are thousands of us, hundreds of thousands of us. In the 500 years we've been in this country, Henry VIII tried to hang us. Henry VIII tried to hang us because of who we are. Other people tried to deport us. The Tory party have hated us for years. And this is them attempting to drive the final nail into the coffin of our heritage and our culture.
All right, well, there's a lot to unpack. And I just want to say to viewers, yes, the picture is sort of coming in and out, but we can hear every word you say. Obviously, is the thing of today's programme, Jake. Now, the government says there is an appetite to extend powers available to the police, particularly from local authorities. Do you accept, Jake, that there are some encampments that have not been popular with people who live near them?
Yes, because people who live near them are racist. This goes back to, I'll give you an example from the whole Dale Farm debacle. Yeah, what happened at Dale Farm 10 years ago. So Dale Farm was a gypsy site, which was actually owned by the gypsies. It wasn't an illegal site. And essentially they didn't get planning permission for building some structures on that site, and so the council, there were evictions. Right now, here's the thing: if let's say one of the big supermarkets, Tesco's or Sainsbury's, wanted to build a supermarket, right? They, the way they would get planning permission from the local authority is nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Here's a brown envelope under the table full of £50 notes. Okay? It's just because the gypsies, didn't have the money to basically bribe the local authority. But now, the main complaints coming about the Dale Farm site came from one of the neighbours, and this guy was an absolute fucking racist. He sort of said things like, why can't gypsies be normal like me? Why can't they live in houses? And if they're travellers, why don't they go travelling? Fuck you. That's just pure and utter, racism towards gypsies. Yeah.
I accept that there's a conflict, and I also accept that there needs to be a resolution. Let me just quote somebody who spoke to Parliament yesterday. This is Martin Hewitt, chair of the National Police Chiefs Council, so not a gypsy. He said very, very clearly, there is the fundamental problem is that there is an insufficient provision of sites for gypsies and travellers to occupy. That we agree with. 85% of police forces that respond to the government's own consultation on this said they didn't need more powers. The powers, Joe, are already really strong. I was with a family just last week that were evicted 3 times in one day, that were convoyed and chased out of Sussex by Sussex police to Kent, like some bizarre scene out of the Duke of Hazzards. It's ridiculous, the powers that are there already. They're already too strong. But people who live on the road and who are nomadic, they would rather experience constant eviction, the constant cycle of eviction and harassment, than be split up into social housing, where they would be isolated from their wider family. The thing that strikes me about all of this is, my dad was a massive fan of Margaret Thatcher. The Tory party are dumping on some of the weakest people in our society. But those people, in many cases, are great fans of the Tory party. We're independent, we often run small businesses, we want nothing more than to be left alone.
All right.
And the Tory party is throwing, this is red meat to the Tory party. So it's performative prejudice.
All right.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time. I remember the Battle of the Beanfield from the 1980s. I think I've shown the footage of that on this stream before. The Tories like persecuting gypsies. So fuck knows why gypsies would ever fucking vote for them.
Well, let me...
The most community.
All right, you've made that very clear. There are lots of things to talk about. Just stay with us. Can you just address that final remark about the Tory party and red meat, cultural cleansing? I mean, it's a pretty damning indictment of the view from Jake.
I disagree with Jake in the strongest possible terms. I think it's very important to be very clear about what this bill does and doesn't do. This is not about authorised traveller camps. That is not about that at all. It is about unauthorised sites, which are already...
Authorised sites? Do you know what that sounds like?
Ooh, let me guess here. Does it sound sort of like... Oh God, my brain actually forgot terms, sorry.
Reservations.
Oh, I was thinking...
Yeah,
I was thinking more the Jewish analogy, but yeah.
You know, reservations, you know, in the United States where, you know, the Native Americans are told, well, you can live here freely, but only here. You know? That's kind of what it sort of smacks of, isn't it?
A civil offence. This is about making them a criminal offence, which means that police can be involved. Now, I have seen locally the impact...
Come on, admit it. The Tories want to criminalise gypsies. That's what I want to do.
Well, I mean, we just talked about apartheid regimes and Israel, and essentially this is a similar thing, like segregating the land and deciding where they get to live, and then they can take that away whenever.
Impact that this can have on local communities, and it is, as Jake pointed out, about fairness in the sense of it is not fair that my parish council had to spend £10,000 evicting an unauthorised travel site next to a playground. It is not fair that my community had to deal with the distress and upset and disruption which that brought, and the cleaning up bill afterwards. The fact that the head of my parish council, a woman, had to go and deal with this personally with no help from the police. That is not fair. And that is what this is going to deal with. It is not about, it's absolutely not about in any way affecting authorised traveller camps.
Jake?
Listen, I agree. I agree that there's a conflict, but one of the things that Laura is very, very quickly glossing over is the fact that there is a national shortage of places for people to be. That situation where...
Yeah, funny that. You'd think well, the Tories might have done that on purpose. Oh, wait. They have.
People are forced into conflict with each other is the exact...
I mean, you know, they only want gypsies to live on authorised land, but, you know, they're not going to provide enough of that authorised land. Yeah.
Of the government, which has not provided enough places for people to live. If you want to change a situation, you provide a carrot as well as a stick. The police don't take a stick; they want places for people to be, and that's what everybody has been.
Well, let me let Laura respond on that. I mean, if there were more sites, then we wouldn't have this problem, Laura.
I'm glad that and I agree in terms of the fact that we must have proper sites available. Certainly, where I am locally, there are 3 authorised sites. They were not used by these individuals, and we do need strong powers to be able to deal with them. So that's certainly not the case where I am at all.
Right, can I just show you this? Jake, I'll read it out to you, but Laura, you can probably see it too. This is in The Independent. The headline, "Police do not want discriminatory new laws to criminalise travellers," senior officer says. So this is the police response to what is being proposed. What's your response to that?
I would go back to what...
Yeah, because there's already enough accusations that the police are racist.
Yeah.
I said earlier, Joe, this is about the fact that this is already a civil offence, but it is causing immense distress. You're leaving it to councils to be able to deal with...
Yeah, it's causing immense distress to racists who don't like gypsies. Yeah, I'm going to tell the truth.
With this, people are unqualified, and then who don't then have the police support to be able to evict the travellers for trespassing on people's land, and that is what these powers are all about. They are in no way intended to discriminate towards people or intended to affect authorised camps.
Right. Do you have sympathy with what Laura is saying, Barry? Do you have illegal encampments? Is it a problem in Brent?
I think Jake has spoken very powerfully, and I think this problem of the restriction of a nomadic way of life, and that's how he couched what he was saying, and I thought presented the case very well, is something that, of course, has come about because of the increasing lack of common land available as it was over a century and so ago. And that means that travellers are being constrained. Now, I think what you've got to imagine is if we were talking about nomads on the steppes of Asia being corralled by the government of China, would we consider that these criminalizations were an appropriate response?
Brilliant.
Also, important note, from what I've looked up, apparently the sites in England or in the UK can house maybe 10,000 people. There are 200,000 Romani people in the United Kingdom.
Not all of them will still be on.
Well,
the
yeah,
road.
not all of them will do that, but
yeah, you're
less
right.
Than 10,000 people.
You're right. Yeah. Well, what we know is there's not enough spaces. I mean, that Tory MP saying, those gypsies who were she supposed were had an illegal encampment. Probably had that illegal encampment because there wasn't enough spaces in the three local legal gypsy sites. So authorized gypsy sites, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, right?
Well, and also even she said they weren't used, but I mean, I'm sure they were used by a smaller number of people. But it's like one of those things where it's like, do you want to separate families by expecting them to move to different sites? Or, of course, they're going to want to live together. Like, what the fuck?
I don't think we would. I think we would see it as discriminatory. I think we would see it as an abuse of human rights. I entirely agree with Laura that we need to have I think with Jake rather, that we need to have much greater provision of authorized camps. But I don't think we should be setting about criminalizing a group of people because that is their way of life, to be nomadic. That's their choice, and in a free society, it should remain their choice.
Harry, it was part of the Conservative Party manifesto. Listening to this discussion, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to make that point myself, which is this suggestion that this is somehow, just some sort of niche interest of the Home Office or, evil Tory MPs who want to do it. This was a Tory manifesto commitment, and the Tories won an 80-seat majority on the back of it. And I think you'll be hard to find anyone who would not understand the idea of having someone who is illegally trespassing and living on your land without your permission, and have been asked to move on but are powerless to move them on, it is an unfair scenario. And I'm going to kick back a little bit on this idea that also that there's no appetite. There's no appetite for further increasing powers. It may not be the top of the police's priority, but local councils and town halls are calling for this. And something has to be done, and it's obviously going to be an incredibly sensitive and tough debate to have. But I suspect it's probably one that could also be had with a little bit of dialing down on the rhetoric. People go into politics to do things, to represent their constituents and change the laws without wanting to, socially cleanse and exterminate people. I just think it's really unhelpful to be having that sort of level of mudslinging.
Right, Jake, do you accept that point about the rhetoric?
Listen, I won't be taking any lessons from The Sun on how to communicate about my community. It had a campaign called Stamp on the Camps. It has deliberately, over the course of many years, whipped up racial hatred against the Gypsy and traveller community, and
and the Daily Mail as well, I'd add. Which isn't Murdoch. The Mail isn't Murdoch owned, but it is a filthy right-wing rag.
To be given lessons on languages and rhetoric by a Murdoch rag that is guilty of that really sticks in my throat. This is about the cultural cleansing of the British landscape, and it will be resisted. The Tory party might want to get rid of us. but we're going to be here. We're going to be here for a long time. We're starting a campaign called Drive to Survive. Look it up, drive2survive.org.uk. We'll be linking up with people from Black Lives Matter, people from Extinction Rebellions. The whole situation that we're in at the moment, because of COVID and lots of political situations, is we live in a pressure cooker. And the lid is going to come off this summer. And we'll see how much power there is in the Gypsy and Traveller community.
I think Jake Bowers is a great advocate for the Gypsy community, as I've already said. And I would suggest people support, his drive to survive.org.uk. And I know some people are going to say, what does this have to do with LGBTQ people? Well, yet again, gypsies are a marginalised group, who are being, persecuted. And if the Tories are prepared to do that to the Roma gypsy community, then they're going to be prepared to do that to LGBTQ people. Do I need to tell that to LGBTQ people? We're already seeing the rolling back of attitudes with the Tory party, to the dark days of Section 28 when it comes to their attitudes towards the LGBTQ community. Right, Nigel. Yes, Nigel Farage.
America's comeback?
Yes, he's Nigel Farage, you pompous racist twat. He's actually, do you want to hear how he speaks? See if I've got it right. I'll just play a bit of this.
Brexit looked lost, but we, the grassroots, seized it back.
Yeah. Anyways, so do you remember there was a K-pop thing last year where they bought they reserved tickets at that Trump rally in Tulsa. But no one turned up, and Trump was furious. That was the rally Herman Cain went to and contracted COVID-19. But for some reason, Herman Cain seems to be still tweeting from beyond the grave. Anyways,
it's an impressive act.
Well, anyways, basically, anti-racist activists are doing this to Nigel Farage with his speaking tour in the United States. I mean, the thing is that it made me laugh when it said comeback tour. I didn't think the cunt had gone away. And what this tells you is he's not done, stoking racism and hatred and bigotry, and he's not just a racist. Let me remind you, he has said plenty of homophobic shite in his time, and in fact, you can trace the rise, existential rise of anti-LGBTQ hate crimes to the rise of Nigel Farage. Weird that. So he ain't done, stoking hate, and he ain't done grifting, because this is basically Nigel grifting. He's grifting, right? By stoking hate, because there's pay in hate. Unfortunately, what does that say about our fucking world? It really doesn't say anything good as far as I'm concerned. Supposedly he turned up to one venue and it was like, I don't know, it was an auditorium which held, I don't know, maybe 1,000, 2,000 people, and there was like 23 people there, and he's pissed at all this. Tough shit. If you're going to spout hate, expect people to, take to basically challenge you about it in all manner of ways, peaceful ways, I would add. Anyways, so Farage, he ain't done stoking hate. We still have to be, vigilant when it comes to Nigel. The other thing before I move on to Nigel is, I talk about the homophobia stuff. obviously now that Brexit's done, right, and he might very well move on to hatred towards LGBTQ people and particularly trans people, because that seems to be the way the far right are going. That's their next target, us. So trans people need to wake up to this. And yes, I do know trans people who have been stupid enough to support UKIP and vote for Nigel Farage. Anyways, so it's time for Cringe with Jenner. Yes, Caitlyn Jenner, in her run for office, is yet again being cringe. In fact, she's being transphobic. Well, here's a trans woman who's a Republican being transphobic. Jeez, I'm shocked.
Yeah, it's who would have guessed that Caitlyn Jenner, the way she's been acting, has decided to, ride that hate train.
So, Caitlyn Jenner has been criticised for mocking Dr. Rachel Levine's appearance with a post originally shared by Donald Trump Jr. Jenner, who is running for government in California, shared a disgusting post from Donald Trump Jr. on her Instagram story. The post lashed out at liberal girl and an Assistant Secretary of Health, Dr. Rachel Levine, compared her to a conservative girl. Jenner and implied... Sorry? What?
Okay, so the post lashed out at quote-unquote liberal girl and Assistant Secretary for Health Dr. Rachel Levine, compared her to quote-unquote conservative girl Jenner, and implied the value of either woman lay in their physical appearance. Trump Jr. captioned the photo that conservative girls are just better looking.
Amongst those to condemn Jenner is transparent star Alexandra Billings. Do you know, I've only watched 3 episodes of Transparent. I never really got into it. She addressed Jenner directly, and I only had to do that because I was taking part in a vlog where I was asked to watch it. So she addressed Jenner directly on Instagram, pointing out that sharing Trump's post says volumes about your self-hatred and your blatant transphobia. Yeah. Billings said that she knew this rage all too well, as she lived with it for years and is still haunted by a cacophony of voices. Now this is the meme. Yeah. I wonder if Donald Trump Jr. is like Donald Trump Sr., like he likes grabbing them by the pussy. But she pointed out that she is not running for public office, nor is she a self-proclaimed robot. Yeah, I remind people, yes, Caitlyn Jenner did do that right at the beginning of that reality TV show, I Am Kate, which was cancelled because no one could relate to Caitlyn Jenner. Yeah. No. Not even trans. I mean, okay, maybe I can relate to having dysphoria, but Caitlyn Jenner breathes rarefied air and insulated by wealth.
Yeah.
You're in a spiral of spiritual chaos. No, not chaos. Choose. What was it?
Self-proclaimed role model. You're in a spiral of spiritual chaos, and your search for admiration and public approval is just as transparent as your egocentric, pseudo-Republican, rich, white, privileged lifestyle you flaunt, pretending to be some sort of everyday citizen caring about everyday events.
Yeah, the everyday citizen thing is hilarious when she was going, I'm going to take back California for the people, whilst complaining that a wealthy friend of hers, left California because he couldn't find room to park his private jet because of homeless people.
She continued, with your private airplane hangar full of lies and your $1 million shoes, you have as much in common with us as we do with you. Sorry.
Billings explained that it isn't your transness people are bothered by. Instead, she argued people dislike Jenner's behaviour as a human, and said the California gubernatorial candidate's profound need to be liked is sadly backfiring. I mean, I've said it before on this stream. She's just doing this for fucking attention. She pleaded with Jenner to think of others, including the trans youth who believe you to be some sort of superhuman. She added the terrible... I don't know any trans youth who consider it to be superhuman. She added the terrible voices will never go away, but she can navigate that ache of self-harm a little more every day. She made her a little bit more freer. There is a sense, and I have got this from Caitlyn Jenner in the past, that she is a bit repressed. But a lot of people on the right are. Billings wrote, free yourself, Caitlyn, by doing that. You may set the greatest example of your life, and that might turn out to be the most beautiful way you can serve both our state and our community. In that, you may actually turn out to be a true hero. Caitlyn Jenner claimed in an interview with Fox News host Sean Hannity that she wants to be a role model to young people, but she refused to back down from her controversial comments about trans participation in sports. Yeah, and also she was being hypocritical because she said she didn't want to, she didn't want any more laws and regulations in California. Yet she wants to ban trans people from competing in sports. Well, that means a new law. Jenner revealed in another interview that she's in favour of reintroducing the death penalty in California, which had been halted in the state since 2006. In the same interview, she also added that she didn't vote in November 2020 presidential election. Instead, she revealed that she chose to play a round of golf instead of exercising her rights to vote. Well, that's been proven to be a lie, actually. She did vote. And she didn't want people to know because she obviously voted for Trump. She has also claimed that people should vote for her because she is a cute and adorable. Cute. Those are not two words I would associate with Caitlyn Jenner. Has a great ability to listen. She has a great ability to listen. Well, why is it that we've all been telling her that the Republican Party hates fucking trans people and she just still won't listen? And loves ideas. Well, here's an idea. Why don't you listen? For real. But a whole host of celebrities, including Billings, have come together and share that they do not love Jenner's views. Sarah Silverman, Megan... can you pronounce that?
Sarah Silverman, Megan Rapinoe, George Takei, Plastic Martyr, and California's incumbent governor Gavin Newsom have slammed Jenner for her shockingly anti-trans views.
Yeah. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, there's something worse, actually.
Oh, no.
We always said that she was running for office for attention. She might be actually running office as a means of grifting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially why Donald Trump ran for office. And she's using a tactic Donald Trump used. Donors to Donald Trump's election campaign were hit with pre-checked recurring monthly donations. Election officials have denounced the campaign tactic. The tactic is now being used by Californian gubernatorial candidate Caitlyn Jenner and Doug Ooze. I guess that's another. Another Republican. Caitlyn Jenner, a gubernatorial candidate in California, a recall election, who's using a campaign fundraising trick from former President Donald Trump's playbook that commits donors to recurring payments, Politico reported. Both Jenner and the former Republican representative Doug Ooze, is it Ooze? No, it would be Ooze if it was a Z. Ooze?
I don't know.
OSC
is one that I'm not familiar with.
Who are running as Republicans against Governor Gavin Newsom, have pre-checked boxes in their donation pages that sign contributors to make monthly payments to their campaigns. A New York Times investigation found that Trump used a tactic. Talking of investigations, I saw today that there is another criminal investigation being launched into Trump's business empire.
Oh, shock.
Yeah. Used a tactic in which recurring donation boxes were pre-checked at the bottom of fundraising emails. Contributors had to opt out instead of opting in for recurring charges. That's how you end up with nuisance emails. You have to opt out when you sign up to various things. Well, essentially it looks like she's grifting. Now I'm going to have to cut this short because I am clenching my butt cheeks. I need to go to the toilet. So I will get to the rest of the stories on Friday if there is a stream on Friday.
If you can get the Tennessee governor bullshit, because they're trying to essentially do like a hate crime law in Tennessee. They want businesses that allow trans people to use the bathrooms to post signs on the bathrooms.
Okay, well, if you come on Friday, we'll cover that story. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, if you come on Friday, we'll cover that. All right. I promise. All right. And as well as the stuff I'm missing out. Sorry, I really need to go.
Yeah,
Do you want to quickly tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, they can find me at OZMA'S.com. I should start streaming on twitch.tv/OzMA'InTheDark starting this Saturday and then Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern till late at night because I'm streaming raids during the pre-patch for the expansion, Burning Crusade. And I'll also be streaming that on the launch day. I'll be streaming leveling up.
Right. Okay.
Anyways.
All right, folks. Look, subscribe, and the comment and subscribe to this channel, please. Sorry, I really need to.
Yeah.
I'm in a bit of a rush here. All right. Until Friday. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe and peace out.